On a rainy street in South Bronx, a billionaire's wife was sprawled on the cold pavement, blood pouring down her body, soaking her million-dollar coat. Thousands of people rushed past, phones raised high, faces blank, but not one of them stopped, except for a little black girl in a torn red hoodie who knelt beside the dying woman and whispered, "You're not alone." She had no way of knowing that one small act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would shatter two worlds and rewrite her life forever. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The boardroom was too bright, too quiet for what came next. Daniel Hayes sat halfway through a presentation about numbers that no longer meant anything the moment his phone buzzed on the table. The screen showed an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something in his chest told him to answer. "Hello," he said, keeping his voice low. "Is this Mr. Daniel Hayes?" The voice on the line was small and careful, with the kind of shaking that slips between words. Daniel straightened in his chair. "Yes. Who is this?" "I am sorry, sir. I found this number in a wallet. It says emergency contact." The child swallowed breath quick against the phone. "A lady fell. There is blood. I called 911. They said help is coming." Daniel pushed back from the table so fast the legs scraped the floor. The sound was sharp enough to cut through the meeting. Dozens of heads swung toward him. The presenter stopped mid-sentence. His assistant flinched and dropped her tablet. It hit the carpet and slid under a chair. Daniel did not notice. He was already standing, one hand on the back of the chair, knuckles pale. "Where are you?" His voice kept even, but the air around it was tight. "I do not know the name. I am near a small store. There is a green sign." "Wait, please." The phone moved. He heard rain and traffic, and the girl whispering to herself as if reading. "Willis Avenue. The corner says 146th, South Bronx. I think that is right. I am sorry if that is wrong. It is fine. You did the right thing." He looked at the glass door as if distance could be forced to move. "Stay with her. Do not try to lift her. Keep talking to her if you can. I am on my way." "Okay." The word was thin. "I am trying to keep her head on a soft thing. She is breathing slow. I was scared to touch her at first." "You are helping," he said. "What is your name, Maya?" "Thank you, Maya." He ended the call before the room could press in on him again. Silence held for a beat, then the room filled with the wrong kind of sound. Soft questions, shoes shifting, the rustle of paper. Daniel reached for his jacket and knocked a glass of water off the table. It shattered against the floor, fragments skittering under the chairs. The sound made people jump. He did not apologize. "Stop the meeting," he said to no one, and everyone voice low but final. "I need the car. Now." He turned for the door. The general counsel opened her mouth and closed it. The head of finance took a step after him and stopped. His assistant hurried around the end of the table, bent to grab the tablet, then straightened and almost ran to keep up. At the elevator, Daniel pressed the call button and pressed it again when nothing happened in the first second. He exhaled once through his nose, long and steady, the way he did before walking onto a stage, only this time there was no stage and no script, and nothing felt steady. When the doors finally slid open, he stepped in, then held the doors with his hand until his assistant caught up. "What should I tell the board?" she asked, breath a little uneven. "Tell them the truth," he said. "Tell them my wife is hurt, and I am going to her." The doors closed. The car dropped. He stared at the panel and listened to the cables hum. In the mirrored chrome, he saw the top half of his face and barely recognized the man looking back. He tried Sarah's number and got her recorded voice. He ended the call as the elevator opened to the lobby. Outside, the rain came straight down and bounced back up from the concrete. The driver pulled the sedan to the curb with the wipers beating time. Daniel slid into the backseat water, tracking down the side of his face and soaking into his collar. "South Bronx," he said. "Willis and 146th. The driver nodded and pulled into traffic. Tires hissed over standing water. The car lurched and steadied. Daniel breathed in through his nose, out through his mouth, the way he had taught himself when the markets crashed and the cameras were too close. This was not a market, and there were no cameras, only the image of a sidewalk he could not yet see, and a voice that had asked permission to call him by name. He called the unknown number back. Maya answered on the second ring. "Hello, it is Daniel again. I am in the car. Are you still with her?" "Yes." "I am sitting next to her. I put my sweatshirt under her head. The dispatcher is still on my other phone. People were looking and taking videos, but they walked away. I did not know if that was okay. I asked a man to help and he said he was late. Do not worry about them, he said. His jaw tightened and he made himself loosen it. Is she breathing the same? Yes. Slow. I am talking to her like you said. Her hand moved a little and then stopped. The ambulance is close. I can hear it. You are doing exactly what she needs, he said. I am almost there. He held the phone away and looked through the rain-blurred windshield. The driver changed lanes to avoid a flood near the curb. Daniel gripped the back of the front seat and leaned forward. Faster, if you can, he said, calm but urgent. Yes, sir. He brought the phone back to his ear. Maya, I am going to hang up so I can call you if the line drops. Keep the dispatcher. Keep talking to her. Tell her help is coming. Tell her she is not alone. Okay, Maya said, voice barely above the rain. I will stay. He ended the call and closed his eyes for a moment. He could feel his heart beating in his throat. He pictured Sarah in the kitchen that morning, tapping a ginger candy from the little tin into her palm, smiling at him as if time were simple. He had said he might be late. She had rolled her eyes and kissed his cheek anyway. The car turned off the avenue and the buildings changed brick and steel and light. Then more brick, more shadow. A pair of sirens wailed ahead, rising and falling, then settled into a steady cry somewhere near. The driver slowed and pointed through the windshield. There, he said. Daniel opened the door before the car stopped. Wet air hit his face. He ran toward the cluster of lights at the corner, toward the sound of a voice he now knew, toward a shape on the ground he could not yet let himself name. The rain hit harder as Daniel reached the corner. He almost slipped running the last few steps. His breath came fast, chest burning. The blue light of an ambulance cut through the haze, flashing against puddles and faces. People stood under awnings, phones raised, not helping. And then he saw her. Sarah lay on the sidewalk, one hand resting near her stomach, her skin pale under the streetlight. A little girl in a red hoodie was kneeling beside her, both hands pressing a sweatshirt against Sarah's head, trembling but focused. Daniel dropped to his knees beside them. Sarah. Hey, Sarah, it's me. His voice cracked. You're okay. Don't move, all right. I'm here now. You're not alone. Her eyes fluttered. Dan. The sound of his name barely existed, but it was there. Yeah. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe. His hand shook as he brushed wet hair off her face. We're going to the hospital, okay? Just stay with me. The girl kept her head down, voice small. She was breathing funny, so I called. They said an ambulance was coming. I didn't know what else to do. Daniel turned to her. You did the right thing. A siren screamed closer. He heard the splash of heavy boots and a shout, and then two paramedics slid in beside them. One checked Sarah's pulse and looked at him quickly. She's stable enough to move. Sir, we'll take her now. They lifted Sarah gently, speaking in short, clipped phrases. Daniel followed his hand, gripping the stretcher rail. When they slid her into the ambulance, he turned back to the little girl. Rain poured off the edge of her hood. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a few bills, his fingers still shaking. Take this, please, for calling, for staying. Maya shook her head, water dripping from her chin. No, I don't want money. I just didn't want her to be alone. Daniel froze money still in his hand. Then he exhaled, slowly folded the bills, and slipped them back into his pocket. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the man in a soaked suit, the child in the rain. He took off his coat and placed it over her shoulders without a word. The fabric dwarfed her small frame. Keep that, he said quietly. She glanced up at him, eyes wide. You need it more. He gave a tired smile that didn't quite hold. Not tonight. The paramedic called from the back of the ambulance. Sir, we have to go. Daniel nodded once, then looked back at Maya. Thank you, he said. You saved her. The girl just stood there shivering, clutching the edge of the coat. I hope she's okay. She will be, he said, because of you. He climbed into the ambulance. The doors closed behind him with a dull thud, shutting out the noise of the street. Through the small window, he caught one last glimpse of the little girl still standing there under the streetlight, hair plastered to her cheeks, watching as the ambulance pulled away. Inside, the siren roared back to life. Daniel sat beside Sarah, holding her hand as the city streaked past in flashes of red and blue. Her breathing was steady now, but his heart wouldn't slow. He bent close to her ear. It's okay, Sarah. I'm here. You're safe. We're gonna be okay. Her fingers twitched in his grasp, just enough for him to feel them. He looked down at his wet hands, then out the window, where the rain blurred everything into motion. The girl's small voice echoed again in his mind. I didn't want her to be alone. Daniel swallowed hard. Neither did I. he whispered. Daniel's hand trembled as he pushed open the hospital door. The air inside smelled like antiseptic and wet cloth. His shoes left prints of dirty rainwater on the polished floor. He didn't notice. A nurse at the desk looked up. "Sir, you can wait in the hall. They're still checking her vitals." He nodded, though he hadn't really heard her. His heartbeat had not caught up with the fact that the ambulance had stopped, that Sarah was inside, somewhere still breathing. He pressed both palms together, elbows on his knees, trying to steady them. His fingers left faint streaks of blood on each other. He hadn't realized he was still marked from holding her. The waiting area was too bright. Machines hummed behind the doors. Somewhere a monitor beeped at a slow, even pace. He exhaled, his shoulders finally sagging. "She's alive. Just hold on to that." Across from him, a television flickered with muted news, the anchor's mouth moving without sound. A janitor pushed a mop down the hallway, wheels squeaking on the tile. It was the only thing that seemed alive in that sterile corridor. He rubbed his eyes and stared at the floor, the water still dripping from his coat onto his shoes. The image of the little girl in the red hoodie would not leave him, small, shaking, soaked to the bone. She had stayed when no one else had. A doctor stepped through the swinging doors. Mr. Hayes Daniel stood so fast his knee hit the metal bench. "Yes, she's stable. A mild concussion, a few stitches. She'll need rest, but the baby is fine. You can see her." He didn't thank the doctor, just moved. Each step felt heavy and fast at once. Sarah was awake when he entered. Her head was wrapped, her face pale but warm in the yellow light. An IV line traced from her wrist to a clear bag above. She turned when she heard him, eyes tired but focused. "You made it," she said, her voice a whisper, scratched raw. He sat beside the bed, took her hand carefully. "You scared me half to death." She gave a weak smile, then her eyes filled. "The girl, where is she? The one who stayed with me." "She's okay," he said softly. "She waited until the ambulance came. She called me, found my number in your wallet." Sarah closed her eyes, a tear sliding toward her ear. "I remember her voice. She kept telling me to breathe. I wanted to tell her I was trying." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "She never left you." There was a silence that didn't feel empty, the kind that asks for truth. He looked down at her hand in his, the bruises on her knuckles, the hospital band digging lightly into her skin. "A stranger did what I should have done," he said quietly. She stopped. Everyone else walked by. Sarah's brow furrowed, eyes opening again. "You can't blame yourself, for I'm not blaming," he cut in a voice low, strained. "Just realizing. That girl has nothing. No shoes, no coat." And she still stopped. Sarah watched him. The lines at the corners of his eyes deepened, not from age, but from something heavier. "She said something to me," Sarah murmured, her tone softer now, "when the sirens were close. She said, even when nobody helps you, you don't need a reason to help someone else." Daniel's throat tightened. He couldn't speak for a moment. The nurse entered to check vitals, adjusting the monitor, and the beeping returned steady and calm. Daniel stood, giving her space, then stepped toward the window. Outside, the rain had thinned to a drizzle. Cars moved slowly along the streetlights, reflecting off puddles. He rested a hand against the cold glass. His reflection looked back, tired, wet, still holding on to that little voice in his mind. Behind him, Sarah's voice was soft, fragile, but sure. "Find her, Dan. Tell her I'm okay. Tell her she mattered." He turned, eyes still wet. "I will." The nurse smiled faintly at the tenderness between them, then left the room quietly. Daniel sat again beside Sarah's bed, fingers tapping once against the metal rail before he stilled them. "I'll find her tomorrow," he said almost to himself. "It's the least I can do." Sarah reached for his hand. "You'll find her." For a while they didn't speak. The rain eased outside, the city noises faded, and the only sound left was the soft rhythm of two steady breaths, hers and his, trying to believe that kindness still had a place in the world. And somewhere in that silence, Daniel made a decision he didn't yet know how to explain. Daniel returned to the hospital early the next morning. The corridors were quieter than the night before, carrying only the hum of machines and the faint smell of coffee from the nurse's station. Sarah was asleep when he checked on her. He stood there for a moment, hand on the bed rail, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. When she stirred, he whispered, "I'll be back soon," and left before she could ask where he was going. At the front desk, he asked the night nurse, the same woman who had been there when Sarah was brought in, if she knew anything about the girl who called the ambulance. The nurse looked up from her clipboard, eyes sharp but kind. "You mean the little one with the red hoodie?" she asked. "She came in with your wife but didn't stay." Gave a fake last name at first, but one of the EMTs got her info when she helped with intake. Said she lives off Willis, near the old public housing block. Apartment 3B, I think. Grandma's name is Ruth Green. Daniel nodded slowly, trying to fix the name in his mind. Thank you. She didn't take the snacks we offered, the nurse added almost to herself. Said her grandma was waiting on her. He left the hospital a few minutes later, the nurse's words echoing with the sound of his shoes on the wet pavement. The morning air was sharp, carrying the smell of rain and street oil. His driver offered him an umbrella. He waved it off. The Bronx looked different in daylight. No flashing lights, just gray buildings, broken sidewalks, and a kind of stillness that felt older than the city itself. He parked 2 blocks from the address, deciding to walk the rest of the way. The apartment building was a squat structure of faded red brick, the number 146 painted crookedly over the doorway. The entrance smelled of damp wood and bleach. He climbed the stairs, one hand brushing the rail. Each step creaked. When he reached the 3rd floor, the hallway light flickered once before staying on. Door 3B had peeling paint, the number half missing. He knocked gently. It took a while before he heard movement inside, a slow shuffle, then the slide of a chain lock. The door opened just wide enough for a woman's face to appear. She was older, maybe in her 60s, her skin pale against a headscarf that had seen better days. She squinted at him through tired eyes. "Can I help you? I'm looking for Maya," he said, lowering his voice out of instinct. "I'm Daniel Hayes. She called me last night when recognition flickered in her eyes. When your wife fell, she finished for him. She told me." She coughed the sound dry and deep, pulling a small cloth from her pocket. She came home shaking like a leaf. "Wouldn't take off that wet sweatshirt until I made her." "Is she here?" he asked gently. The woman shook her head, then opened the door wider, motioning for him to come in. The room was small, dim, and clean in the way that comes from habit, not comfort. A pot sat on the stove, steam rising weakly. An inhaler and a half-empty bottle of water rested on the counter. "She went out an hour ago," the woman said, easing herself into a chair. "Didn't say where. Said she needed air." Daniel looked around. The furniture was mismatched. A single blanket lay folded neatly on the couch. The air felt heavy, like the room hadn't been opened in days. "I'm sorry for showing up unannounced," he said. "I just wanted to thank her. She saved my wife's life." The woman smiled faintly, one side of her mouth lifting. "That child's got more heart than sense. Been that way since she could walk." He hesitated, then asked softly, "Are you Mrs. Green?" "That's right, Ruth Green." She motioned toward the empty chair. "You look like you could sit for a minute." He obeyed, resting his hands on his knees. "The nurse at the hospital said you weren't feeling well." Ruth waved the thought away. "Just my lungs acting up again. The cold air don't help." She studied him for a moment. "You don't look like a man used to climbing these stairs." Daniel smiled a little out of politeness. "Probably not." She leaned back. "Maya told me about your wife. Said she didn't know why nobody stopped. Said it didn't feel right to walk away. That's the thing about her, she can't pass by someone hurting. Even when she's barely keeping herself together." He felt something tighten in his chest. "I'd like to help if I can. You shouldn't have to worry about her being alone." Ruth gave a slow shake of her head. "We've been fine. Just a rough spell." Her cough interrupted her sharp this time. She pressed the cloth to her mouth and looked down, embarrassed. Daniel glanced at the empty inhaler on the counter. "You need a doctor." She smiled again, smaller this time. "Don't we all?" He stood after a moment, unsure what else to say. "If Maya comes back, could you tell her I stopped by and that my wife is okay?" "I'll tell her," Ruth said. "She'll be glad to hear it." Daniel hesitated at the door. "If you or Maya need anything, food, medicine, anything at all, I can make sure you get it." Ruth nodded politely, as if used to such offers. "You're kind to say that, but we manage." He didn't argue. "Thank you for letting me in." When he stepped back into the hallway, the air felt colder. He paused on the landing, looking down the stairwell where the faint sound of city traffic echoed upward. He thought of Sarah's words from the night before. Find her. Tell her she mattered. Now he had found part of her world, and it was smaller and harder than he had imagined. He took one last look at the door marked 3B, then started down the stairs, unaware that behind that same door, a girl in a red hoodie was standing just inside the kitchen, holding her breath, waiting until his footsteps disappeared before stepping out. Daniel reached the sidewalk before realizing he was still breathing through his mouth. The air outside felt heavier than it should, thick with rain and exhaust. He paused beside the car, one hand on the cold door handle, but he didn't open it. His eyes lifted toward the windows above 3 rectangles of darkness framed in rust and water stains. He couldn't stop thinking about Ruth's hands, the way they shook when she coughed, the deep rattle that came from somewhere her body no longer had strength to hide. He had seen people exhausted before, workers, partners, men who'd lost too much money, but this was a different kind of weariness, the kind that came from years of carrying someone else's weight. He finally got into the car and called the nurse who had given him the address. His voice came out quieter than he expected. "There's an elderly woman, Ruth Green, at 146 Willis Avenue, apartment 3B. She's very sick. Could you send a home visit team?" A pause, then the nurse answered, cautious. "Sir, we can't go without patient consent." "Then log it as anonymous," he said. His tone steadied, not angry, just final. "Please make sure someone gets there." By the time he returned to the hospital that afternoon, Ruth had already been taken in. Pneumonia with dehydration, the nurse told him. Serious, but treatable. Daniel nodded, thanking her. The news didn't ease him. It just made the silence in his chest feel heavier. When he asked about the girl, the nurse shook her head. The little one wasn't there when the team arrived. Neighbors said she ran. Daniel stood for a long moment in the hallway. The hum of hospital lights, the faint echo of footsteps, all of it felt distant. Then he turned and left. He didn't call for his driver this time. He walked. The Bronx air was damp and cold, the kind that soaked through clothes without showing it. He moved past shuttered shops and chain-link fences, checking alleys, stairwells, doorways. Each corner carried a trace of her, maybe a red sleeve, maybe a reflection that wasn't there. After nearly an hour, he stopped between 2 buildings and listened. Somewhere close, he heard it shallow, breathing a small gasp, trying to hide. He turned his head toward the sound. A narrow stairwell led down to a basement door, a weak bulb flickering above it. He stepped slowly, shoes scraping against wet concrete. Maya silence, then a soft shuffle. He crouched near the bottom step, lowering his voice. "It's Daniel. I came to see your grandma. They took her to the hospital to help her get better." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then from behind a half-open door, a voice, small, hoarse. "I didn't want them to take her." He felt something twist inside his chest. "They're not taking her away, Maya. She's very sick. They'll help her breathe again." The door opened a little more. He saw her eyes, first bright and wet in the dim light. "If she goes, they'll come for me next. They always do." He shook his head slowly. "No one's coming to hurt you. I won't let them." She stayed pressed against the wall, arms locked around herself. "They'll send me to a place. My friend went there. They cut her hair." She said nobody came back for her. Daniel sat on the lowest step, the cold seeping through his trousers. "You don't deserve that," he said softly. "You did something good. You shouldn't have to hide for it." Her chin trembled. "I don't want to go." He drew in a breath, careful, deliberate. "Okay," he said. "Then come with me for now. Just until your grandma's better. No one will make you leave without us talking first. You have my word." For a moment she didn't move. Then she stepped closer enough for the light to touch her face. He noticed her cracked lips, the smudge of dirt under her chin, the way her shoulders lifted and fell too fast. "Can I see her?" she asked. "As soon as the doctors say yes," he said. "We'll go together." She nodded faintly. When she stepped out of the corner, her legs wobbled. He slipped off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. She didn't resist this time. The fabric nearly swallowed her. "Let's go," he said. "We'll get you warm." The ride home was quiet. She sat by the window, staring out at the rain-streaked lights, her reflection flickering against the glass. Every few seconds she glanced at him as if checking that he was still there. When they reached the house, Sarah met them at the door, still weak, but standing. She smiled when she saw the girl. "You must be Maya." Maya didn't answer, just lowered her gaze. Sarah knelt carefully, one hand bracing the wall. "Thank you for what you did. You saved us." The girl shook her head. "I didn't save anyone. I just stopped." Sarah's smile softened. "Sometimes that's what saving looks like." Daniel stood behind them watching. He saw the small hands clutching his coat, the thin shoulders still shaking even in warmth. Something inside him shifted quietly, like a door opening. Later that night, when the house had gone still, he sat in his study. Rain tapped against the window, steady as breath. He opened his laptop and stared at the blank page before typing 2 words, Project Guardian, then below it, to protect those who are forgotten before they disappear. He paused, listening. Upstairs, Maya's footsteps moved across the floor, soft, uncertain, but there. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the weight of the world tilt ever so slightly towards something good. The house was quiet again. The first few nights after Maya came, she barely spoke above a whisper. She moved through the halls like someone afraid to take up space, closing doors, gently folding her borrowed clothes into neat stacks, always saying thank you too quickly. Sarah, still weak but restless, spent her mornings in the sunroom with a blanket across her knees. Maya would sit near the window with her not talking much, just keeping her company while the light slid slowly across the floor. On the third morning, Sarah smiled and opened a deck of Uno cards. "I used to play this with Noah when he was your age," she said. "He cheats, so be careful." Maya looked uncertain, but she nodded. When Noah got home from school, Sarah pulled him into the game. "This is Maya," she said. "She's staying with us for a while." Noah looked at the small, quiet girl across from him. "You any good at this?" Maya gave the smallest shrug. "I guess we'll see." For the first few rounds, she said almost nothing. But by the time Sarah shouted Uno for the third time, Maya laughed a quick surprise sound that seemed to catch her off guard. Noah grinned. "She's good," he said. "She's pretending she's not, but she's good." That evening, Sarah called from the kitchen, "Dinner's ready." Maya hesitated before joining them at the table. When Daniel reached to pass her the bread, she murmured, "Thank you, sir." He shook his head gently. "You don't have to call me that." She glanced down. "I just don't know what else to say." "Then start with Daniel," he said. "Or just, thank you. That's enough." After dinner, Noah brought out an old storybook and read aloud, stumbling over the longer words. Maya listened, head tilted, until finally she took the book and read a paragraph back to him. Slow, careful, her voice soft but steady. When Noah fell asleep on the couch, Sarah turned to Daniel. "She's like a shadow that's learning to be seen." Daniel nodded eyes on the little girl curled up under the blanket beside their son. "She's been invisible too long." Over the next week, small pieces of Maya's world began to surface. One night, while helping Sarah fold laundry, she spoke without looking up. "Sometimes when the rent was late, they'd come to the door. Grandma would tell me to hide under the bed until they left." Sarah's hand stilled on a towel. "That must have been scary." Maya shrugged the motion small. "You get used to it. I learned to move fast pack. Quick talk less. Stay quiet. That's how you don't get taken." Sarah reached out and touched her wrist lightly. "You don't have to be quiet here." Maya nodded, though her eyes stayed on the folded fabric. Later that night, Daniel found her sitting on the stairs, hugging her knees. He sat beside her, not saying anything at first. The hallway light cast soft lines across her face. "You're thinking about your grandma," he said. She nodded. "I just want to know if she's okay. They don't tell kids much." "She's getting better," he said. "I called the hospital today. She asked if you were being good." Maya's lips curved into a tiny smile. "What did you say? That you're better than good?" She looked down, hiding a small laugh. "You don't even know me." "I'm learning," he said. A silence settled between them, not awkward, just full. After a while, he spoke again. "Maya, listen to me. No one's going to send you away, not while you're with us." She turned to him, searching his face as if testing whether he meant it. His expression didn't waver. "Even if something happens?" she asked. Even then, her eyes glistened under the low light, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she leaned her head lightly against his arm. He stayed still, letting her. From upstairs, Sarah's voice floated down the hall, calling them to bed. Daniel stood and offered Maya his hand. She took it small and hesitant, and together they climbed the steps. That night, as he passed Sarah's room, she whispered, "You're getting through to her." He paused at the doorway, listening to the soft rhythm of two children breathing in the next room, and said quietly, "She's getting through to me." That night, long after the house went quiet, Daniel sat alone in his study. The clock on the wall ticked against the silence. He looked at his phone for a long time before finally dialing. Diana Hart, a woman's voice, answered, crisp but not unkind. "It's Daniel Hayes," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I need your help with something personal." A pause. "Go on." "I want to apply for temporary guardianship," he said, "for the girl Maya Green." Another pause, longer this time. "Daniel, do you understand what you're asking for? This isn't a business transaction. CPS will investigate you, your family, your finances, even your motives. It can take months, and it won't be kind." "I know," he said. "I've read the process." "Then you also know you'll be under a microscope. They'll look for anything: your work hours, your company's press history, your marriage. They'll question whether this is about guilt or redemption." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, his reflection faint in the window glass. Let them. I'm not doing this to fix my image. She's a child who needs a home. That should be reason enough. There was a soft sigh on the other end of the line. It's not reason enough for them. But if you're sure, I'm sure, he said, steady now. File it tomorrow. All right, I'll start the paperwork. Be prepared to show up in court within 48 hours. When the call ended, Daniel stayed seated, the hum of the house surrounding him. He thought about Maya's small hand clutching his sleeve, about Sarah's quiet smile when the girl finally laughed over a card game. He thought about Ruth alone in that hospital bed and about the promise he'd made to protect what goodness the world still had left. He didn't move until the first hint of dawn slipped through the blinds. By morning, the decision no longer felt heavy. It felt necessary. He stopped by the hospital on his way to work. Ruth was sitting up, a blanket draped across her knees. She looked smaller than he remembered, but alert. Her eyes brightened when she saw him. "You again," she said with a half smile. "You look tired." He pulled up a chair beside her. "I wanted to tell you something. I've started the process to be Maya's legal guardian, at least until you're strong enough to take her back." Ruth's smile faded, replaced by quiet surprise. "That's a big thing to take on, Mr. Hayes." "I know," he said, "but I won't let her end up alone in the system." Her gaze softened, full of something between gratitude and worry. "She's a good girl. She's just scared of being sent away again. You'll have to earn her trust every day." "I intend to," he said. For a moment, they sat in silence, listening to the slow rhythm of the heart monitor beside her bed. Ruth reached out, her thin fingers curling around his wrist. "If you do this, don't do it because you owe her. Do it because you see her." Daniel nodded. "I do." By afternoon, the hearing was brief and quiet. Judge Elaine Cook listened, asked a few questions, and signed the order without hesitation. "Temporary guardianship granted for 90 days, she said. Outside, cold air met Daniel as cameras flashed. Reporters shouted, but he didn't slow down. He guided Maya and Sarah through the crowd, eyes forward. That night, the story spread everywhere. Billionaire wins custody of street child for 90 days. Some praised him, others doubted his motives. Daniel switched off the television. From the kitchen came the sound of laughter. Maya's light, uncertain at first, then brighter as Sarah joined in. He sat back in the dark and let the noise fade. Whatever the world thought, the only truth that mattered was the one under his roof. A girl who had stopped running was learning how to stay. On the other side of the city, Reggie sat hunched on the couch, a cigarette burning down between his fingers, the ash long and ready to fall. The floor was a chaos of empty bottles and unpaid bills. His eyes were bloodshot, but sharp enough when they landed on the photo of Daniel Hayes on the television. He grinned, a slow, bitter grin that showed no humor. "So that's where you ended up, little girl," he murmured, "in his pretty house." He picked up his phone from the coffee table, thumb hovering over the screen. A dozen messages unsent, half-written, cruel in their simplicity. He chose one. "Still remember me? I said I'd find you." He sent it to the address he had memorized weeks ago, one of the new security lines attached to Daniel's estate. It wouldn't reach Daniel, not directly, but it would reach her. The next morning, Maya's face was pale as she packed her school bag. Sarah noticed first. "You're quiet today," she said, trying to sound casual. "Just tired," Maya murmured, eyes fixed on the zipper. She'd deleted the message before anyone could see, but her stomach hadn't stopped twisting since she read it. At school, the air felt wrong. A black car idled across the street, windows tinted too dark. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, parents waited there all the time. But when she caught a glimpse of a man's shape in the driver's seat, leaning forward just enough to watch the gate, her breath hitched. At lunch, she didn't eat. Noah nudged her tray toward her. "You okay?" "Fine," she said, but her voice didn't sound like her own. That afternoon, Daniel was in a meeting when his phone buzzed with a single encrypted message from Caleb Kane, the security consultant he had quietly hired weeks earlier. "She's being watched. Same guy, early 40s, Bronx ties. Reggie, I'm guessing. Want me to move?" Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. His reflection in the glass wall of his office looked colder than he felt. He texted back, "Not yet. Keep eyes on him. I'll handle her." When he got home, the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Maya sat at the kitchen counter, a glass of water untouched in front of her. He placed his phone down. "Rough day." She nodded, still staring at the water. Someone was near school. "Did you tell a teacher?" "No, I just knew him." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Maya, look at me." She did. Her eyes were rimmed red the way they got when she was holding something in too long. "I need you to tell me the truth," he said. "Who is he?" Her throat moved as she swallowed hard. "His name's Reggie. He used to live near us. Grandma did his laundry to make rent. Then one day he started asking me to do things. Errands. Small stuff at first." Her hands twisted together, knuckles white. "If I said no, he'd say he'd hurt her. I thought if I just did what he wanted, he'd stop. But he didn't." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to reach for her hand, but he didn't. Not yet. "And now he's trying again." She nodded, once tears starting to spill. "He knows where we live." Daniel's voice was low, steady. "No, he doesn't. He knows where we were, not where we'll be tomorrow." She looked up at him, startled. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm handling it," he said. "You won't see him again. I promise you that." "But what if he—" Daniel shook his head. "There's no what if. You did nothing wrong, Maya. Nothing that gives him power over you." Her face crumpled, the first sob shaking loose from her chest. He moved, then quietly, sitting beside her. He let her lean into him until her breathing steadied, until the shaking stopped. Upstairs, Sarah paused at the top of the stairs, watching them in the kitchen light, the man who had promised too much, and the girl who had been forced to expect too little. When Daniel finally stood, he picked up his phone and walked toward his office. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, almost cold. "Caleb," he said when the line connected, "you can move now. Make sure he gets the message." He ended the call, his hand still on the phone, for a long moment. Outside, the wind picked up scattering dry leaves across the lawn. In the dim light of the street, a dark car pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the distance. Daniel turned off the kitchen light. Upstairs, Maya's door was shut, her breathing soft and even for the first time in days. He stood there for a while, watching the shadow of her room against the hallway wall, quiet, fragile, but safe. For now. The sound came before the headline, the faint buzz of Daniel's phone against the desk. He looked up from the morning paper, half listening, until Sarah called from the kitchen. "Dan, you should see this." Her voice carried something in it, not alarm, but the quiet disbelief of someone reading a line that shouldn't exist. He walked over. The tablet lay on the counter, a headline pulsing across the screen, "Sealed records leak. Who was Maya Green's mother?" The article spread down the page like a wound, each paragraph worse than the last. Camilla Green's arrest history. Her treatment records her years of struggle, reduced to gossip. Every detail stamped with one name. Trina Malloy, blogger, truth seeker, manipulator of public sympathy. Sarah's hand covered her mouth. "They dug up sealed files, Dan. These were never meant to be public." He didn't answer. His eyes moved slowly, line by line, until he reached the quote at the bottom. Anonymous sources confirmed the leak came from an individual close to the Hayes family. He knew immediately who it was. Reggie. Daniel's throat went dry. The kitchen light flickered. He turned the screen away from Sarah before she could see the photo attached. Camilla's mugshot. Blurry haunted her eyes, too much like Maya's. Outside, the morning sky looked washed out, colorless. Maya came in just then, hair still damp from her shower, Noah trailing behind her with a backpack half-zipped. "Why are you staring at the news?" she asked. Daniel forced his voice steady. "It's nothing important." But Noah caught the tension. "It's about her, isn't it?" Sarah shot him a look. "Not now." Maya frowned, glancing from face to face. "What's going on?" Daniel hesitated, the silence heavy enough to answer for him. She stepped closer, saw the tablet, and froze. Her own mother's picture stared back at her, not as she remembered her, but as the world would now see her. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The air in the room changed. Everything felt smaller. "Who showed them this?" she asked finally, her voice shaking. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Someone who wants to hurt you. To hurt us." She stared at the image again. "That's her," she said, barely audible. They made her look like she wasn't even a person. Sarah moved toward her, but Maya stepped back. "No, I don't want them to see me. I don't want to go to school. They'll know. Maya, they'll say I'm just like her." She snapped, her voice cracking halfway through. The words hung in the air, too sharp, too painful to catch. Daniel crossed the room and placed both hands on her shoulders, firm but gentle. "Listen to me," he said quietly. "Your mother was human. She made mistakes, but she loved you. And none of this, none of them changes who you are." Tears welled at the corners of her eyes. "Then why does it feel like it does?" He didn't have an answer. Sarah reached out, but Maya pulled away and ran upstairs. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the hall. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the phone on the counter buzzed again, an alert this time with the hashtag already trending, #Billionaire Baby Snatcher. Daniel turned it face down and leaned against the counter, his shoulders heavy. "He's not done," he said under his breath. Sarah looked at him. "Reggie." He nodded, and now he's using her mother to finish it. Across the city, in a cluttered newsroom cafe, Trina Malloy grinned at the numbers climbing on her laptop. The article had gone viral in less than an hour. The comment section burned with moral outrage, judgment, and cruelty disguised as curiosity. Reggie sat across from her, the faintest smirk on his face. "Told you people like a tragedy with a rich man in it." Trina didn't look up. "They like blood, Reggie. All I did was give them someone to bleed." He raised his cup, the ice clinking. "Then drink up." That night, Daniel stood outside Maya's room. He could hear faint sobs through the door, muffled by a pillow. He wanted to say something. "You're not your past. You're more than what they print," but the words all felt too small. Instead, he whispered the only truth that mattered. "I'll fix this. I promise." And from the other side of the door, though she didn't answer, he knew she heard him. The house had been too quiet for 3 days. Every sound, cutlery against plates, a door closing, even laughter from the television, felt out of place, like noise in a church. Maya barely came downstairs. When she did, she moved quickly, head down, sleeves pulled over her hands. Sarah tried small talk. Noah hovered close. Daniel said less than usual, afraid that even comfort might sound like pity. On the 4th evening, Ruth called from the living room, her voice raspy but steady. "Maya, come sit with me a while." The girl hesitated at the top of the stairs, then walked down slowly. Ruth was sitting on the couch, a knitted blanket on her lap. The flickering news, muted on the TV behind her, showed the headlines still running, "The Billionaire and the Broken Child." Ruth held out a folded photo. "You remember this?" It was old edges soft from years of being handled. Camilla, her mother, smiling in front of a bus stop, sunlight catching her hair. Maya traced the crease down the middle. "They used that picture too," she said quietly, "but they made her look like a mugshot." Ruth nodded. "They'll always tell the story that sells. It's on you to tell the one that matters." Maya stared at the image for a long moment, then looked up. "What if no one believes me?" Ruth smiled faintly. "Belief isn't your job, sweetheart. Truth is." That night, she walked into Daniel's study without knocking. He was still in front of his laptop, sifting through reports, trying to contain what couldn't be contained. When he saw her, he started to close it, but she shook her head. "Don't," she said. "I saw it already." He set the computer aside and waited. Her voice was calm, but tired. Too steady for someone her age. "If they want to tell my mother's story, fine. But this time, we'll tell it first." Daniel looked at her, small, determined, and trembling all at once. "You're sure I'm done hiding?" she said. "I want people to know who she really was, and who he really is." "Reggie," Daniel said softly. Maya nodded. "He's the one who hurt her. He's the reason she got scared, the reason we had to run. But she wasn't what they say she was. She was just trying to keep me safe." Daniel leaned back, exhaling slowly. Then he nodded once. "Okay, we'll do it your way." The next morning, the living room turned into a small studio. The curtains were open, letting in pale morning light that softened everything it touched. Ruth sat close beside Maya on the couch, her hands folded over the blanket on her lap. Daniel adjusted the camera one last time, then nodded. "When you're ready." Maya looked straight ahead, her fingers gripping the edge of the cushion. When the red light blinked on, she started softly. "My name is Maya Green," she said. "And the woman in those photos, they call her a lot of things. Addict, criminal, lost. But her name was Camilla. She was my mother." She paused, steadying her breath. "She wasn't perfect. She struggled with addiction, but that's not who she was. She was smart, funny. She loved to draw and sing. She wanted better for both of us." Her voice wavered. "And then Reggie found her. He wasn't some stranger who cared. He saw her pain and used it. He promised her help, said he'd take care of us. But he took everything instead. Her money, her apartment, her trust. He made her believe she couldn't survive without him." Maya swallowed hard. When she tried to leave, he made sure she couldn't. "He's not just someone from her past. He's my father. The man who broke her life apart." The air in the room thickened. Even Ruth's breathing seemed to slow. Maya's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed firm. "She made mistakes, but she fought every single day to protect me from him. She worked jobs no one would take, went without food so I could eat. People talk about her like she was a headline, but she was a person who tried. She was a mother who loved me." She took one final breath and lifted her gaze to the camera eyes, clear, unwavering. "If they're going to tell our story, let's tell it right. Tell how she survived as long as she did. Tell how she gave me a chance to live the life she couldn't." She wasn't perfect, but she was mine. Daniel turned off the camera. The room stayed silent except for the low hum of the morning outside. Ruth reached over and brushed a tear from Maya's cheek. She'd have wanted it told just like that, she said softly. Maya nodded, whispering, now she finally gets to be seen. Daniel's team worked through the afternoon. They uploaded the video to the Family Foundation's page and released the full documentation, hospital records, transcripts, the proof that Reggie's accusations were lies built on blackmail. By midnight, the numbers were climbing. The first comments were angry, then curious, then different. Threads that once mocked began to soften. Someone wrote, "She speaks like her mother" was more than a headline. Another, "She sounds like truth." By dawn, major outlets had picked up the story. The hashtag shifted hash. Her name was Camila. In the living room, Maya woke to her phone buzzing. She scrolled through messages, strangers thanking her mothers, sending prayers, survivors writing, "You told my story too." She turned to Daniel, who was sitting nearby, half asleep in the armchair. "It worked," she said softly. He opened his eyes, met hers, and smiled, a tired, quiet smile. "No," he said, "you worked." Outside, morning light filled the house again, warm, this time steady. For the first time since the story broke, Maya didn't flinch when she saw her mother's face. She just looked at it and whispered, "We told it right." By late afternoon, the video was everywhere. Clips of her words flooded social feeds. She wasn't perfect, but she was mine. The line spread like wildfire, tweeted, quoted, turned into headlines. At first, the media didn't know what to do with it. Then came the turn. The same outlets that had crucified Daniel now replayed her voice, this time with sympathy. Blogs that had mocked Camila's mugshot now used her full name, Camila Green, not the addict mother. The hashtag that once burned them, #Billionaire Baby Snatcher, faded beneath a new one, her name was Camila. Sarah and Ruth sat together watching the numbers rise on the Foundation's YouTube channel. Ruth's hand trembled around her teacup, but her eyes glistened with quiet pride. She did what her mother never got the chance to do, she said softly. She told her own story. Maya didn't watch the screen. She sat by the window, legs tucked under her, watching the reflection of streetlights flicker against the rain-soaked glass. "Do you think it matters?" she asked. Daniel stood behind her, arms crossed loosely. "It already does." The next morning, Daniel's communications team came in early. They'd worked all night compiling documents, court files, verified timelines, witness statements. By sunrise, the official statement went public. The Hayes Foundation stands with the truth. Every network picked it up. Commentators softened their tone. Trina Malloy's blog began losing traffic, her credibility unraveling. By evening, one outlet ran the headline, "A Child's Courage Rewrites the Story." But behind the attention, Daniel's phone didn't stop ringing. Sponsors wanted statements. Journalists wanted exclusives. A government official wanted a quick interview to clarify the Foundation's role. He turned them all down. No cameras. Not until she's ready. When he finally stepped outside for air, he saw Maya sitting on the porch steps, blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She looked tired, not from fear this time, but from the weight of being seen. He sat beside her. For a long time, they said nothing. The quiet was enough. "She'd be proud, you know," he said at last. Maya nodded slowly. "I think she'd just be surprised people listened." "They listened because you told the truth," he said. Maya looked up at the night sky, her face half lit by the porch light. "Do you ever get tired of fighting for something good?" Daniel thought about it, then shook his head. "No, just tired of watching people lose before they even start." Her small smile came and went like a breath. "Then, I guess we're not done yet." Later that week, Daniel met with Diana Hart in his office. She laid a thin folder on his desk. Judge Cook saw the video, she said. "She's calling an early hearing. She wants Maya to speak." Daniel looked at the file, then at her. "Is that a good idea?" Diana adjusted her glasses. "If she wants to, yes. The public's already on her side. It's time the court sees that she's not just a case number. She's a person." He leaned back, absorbing her words. "When 2 days?" Daniel nodded slowly. "We'll be there." When she left, he stayed at his desk, looking out at the yard where Maya and Noah were playing with Ruth's old dog. Their laughter floated faintly through the open window. It sounded ordinary. He allowed himself a small, tired smile. 2 days. Across town, in a cheap motel room that smelled of bleach and cigarettes, Reggie watched the video play on a cracked phone screen. Maya's voice filled the air, calm, honest, and brave. His hand tightened around the device until his knuckles went white. "You think you can just erase me, huh?" he muttered. "You and your rich friend." A shadow moved near the window. A man stepped out from the corner, older, wearing a worn leather jacket. "You want her back? I can help you," he said, "but it's gonna cost." Reggie smirked. "You must be Dennis Voss." The man nodded once. "You want leverage? I can get it. She's still a kid. Kids are easy." Reggie leaned back, the faint grin returning. "Then let's talk." Back at the Hayes home, Maya was writing something at the dining table, her speech for the hearing. Daniel watched from the doorway, unseen for a moment. She was mouthing words, quietly testing them. He didn't catch all of it, but he heard one line clearly. "Home isn't money. It's being seen." He smiled, faintly proud and terrified all at once. Outside, the wind began to rise again, soft at first, like the start of another storm. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and rain. Daniel sat beside Maya at the long wooden table, hands clasped together, eyes fixed on the floor. Sarah sat a few rows behind them, her arm lightly resting on Ruth's shoulder. The room hummed with quiet conversation, lawyers, whispering pens, tapping the muffled click of cameras outside the door. Judge Elaine Cook entered, her expression steady, professional. The murmur died instantly. "This session is called to order," she said. Her tone was firm, but not unkind. Diana Hart rose first, offering the court her respectful nod. "Your Honor, we stand today to determine the final custody of Maya Green. The court has witnessed her resilience and the Hayes family's commitment. We believe this is not just about guardianship, it's about giving a child a place to belong." The judge nodded, flipping through her papers. "And Child Protective Services." Sandra Jacobs stood next. Her voice, usually crisp, carried a hint of reflection. "After our review, we've found no evidence of neglect or manipulation. Mr. Hayes has met all conditions of the temporary order and demonstrated consistent care." Maya's hands were folded tight in her lap. Daniel glanced at her. She looked calm, but her fingers trembled slightly. Judge Cook looked toward her. "Maya, would you like to speak?" A hush fell over the room. Even the camera shutters stopped. Maya stood slowly. The courtroom light caught the small silver bracelet on her wrist, a gift from Ruth engraved with one word, "Seen." She took a small breath before she spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "When people talk about home, they think it's a place, walls, money, safety. But home isn't any of that. Home is when someone sees you and doesn't look away." She paused, glancing at Daniel, then Sarah, then Ruth. "For a long time, people only saw what I came from, the parts that hurt. My mom, her mistakes, the things I didn't understand. But Mr. Hayes, he saw what I could be. He didn't fix me. He stayed." Her eyes filled but didn't break. "That's what home is. Being seen. Being loved even when you think you don't deserve it." The silence afterward felt different from the ones before. Not heavy. Just still. Judge Cook leaned back slightly, pen tapping against her folder. Then she nodded once quietly. "Thank you, Maya." Daniel exhaled slowly, the tightness in his chest finally giving way to something lighter, though he didn't let himself hope yet. The judge spoke again, her voice clear. "After reviewing all documentation, testimony, and agency reports, this court grants full and permanent guardianship of Maya Green to Daniel and Sarah Hayes." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Ruth smiled through tears. Daniel sat still for a moment before looking at Maya. She was smiling, small but real. Cook gave one last nod. "Everything changes from today." The gavel struck once. Outside the courthouse, the world was waiting, microphones, flashbulbs, noise. The same crowd that had doubted now shouted questions, tinged with curiosity, even approval. Daniel shielded Maya with his arm, guiding her toward the car. Caleb stood near the steps, keeping a quiet distance, scanning faces in the crowd. When Daniel reached him, they exchanged a quick look. Caleb leaned in slightly. "You should know your friend Reggie's been moving again. He's not taking this well." Daniel's expression hardened. "How close, too close," Caleb said. "He's been seen near the old motel on 44th. And he's not alone this time." Daniel nodded once, voice low. "Keep her safe, whatever it takes." Caleb's gaze followed the car as it pulled away, his jaw tight. That night, the city was restless again. In a cheap motel room, Reggie paced, cigarette burning to the filter between his fingers. Across from him sat Dennis Voss, heavy coat, colder eyes. "You sure this is smart?" Dennis asked. Reggie smirked. "Smart's not the point. I want leverage. The girl's the key, the rich man's weakness." Dennis shrugged, lighting his own cigarette. "Then you'd better move fast. He's tightening things around her." Reggie leaned forward, grinning. He can't watch her forever. He didn't notice the faint glint of a tracker hidden under the leg of his chair placed there hours earlier by one of Caleb's men. Meanwhile, Daniel stood in his study, the house finally quiet. Maya's laughter drifted faintly from upstairs, soft, free, unguarded for once. He looked down at the message Caleb had just sent. "He's slipping. We have eyes on him. Just give the word." Daniel typed back, "Wait. Not yet. Let him show himself." He set the phone aside and walked to the window. Outside, the street lamps glowed in the mist. Everything seemed still, but he knew better. Storms didn't end when the rain stopped. Upstairs, Maya's voice echoed softly through the hall, calling for Sarah. It was the sound of something fragile but alive, the sound of a home that had learned to survive the noise. Daniel exhaled and whispered to himself, almost as a reminder, "It's not over yet." And somewhere across town, under a flickering motel light, Reggie's shadow moved toward the next plan. The days after the video blurred together. The news cycle moved fast, but danger never did. Even with Reggie gone, there were moments when Maya would stop mid-sentence, eyes unfocused, like she could still feel him nearby. One evening, Daniel found her on the back porch, sitting with her knees pulled up, watching the streetlights flicker through the rain. "You keep the lights on every night now," he said quietly. "It makes the dark look smaller," she replied. He sat beside her, the wood creaking under his weight. "We'll make it smaller together." But Reggie wasn't gone. Somewhere in the city's gray outskirts, he sat in a borrowed apartment, the window taped against cracks, his phone buzzing with missed calls. The name Dennis Voss glowed on the screen. He hesitated before answering. "You want leverage," Voss's voice rasped. "You've still got the girl." Reggie rubbed his temple. "She's locked behind money and guards. That man's untouchable." "Nothing's untouchable," Voss said. "You just have to make noise loud enough for people to hear." Outside, traffic hissed through wet streets. Reggie looked at his reflection in the window, pale, desperate. "All right," he said, "let's make some noise." 2 days later, the Hayes Foundation hosted its annual benefit, a charity evening under the theme Protecting the Invisible. The ballroom glowed with soft gold light. Strings played quietly near the stage while guests mingled with glasses of champagne, their voices low and polite. The air carried the scent of perfume, rain, and money, a kind of calm that made people believe they were safe. Daniel moved through the crowd, shaking hands, smiling for photographs in front of the banner. From a distance, the night looked effortless, elegant, successful, ordinary. But under the surface, something else was moving. Maya sat with Sarah and Ruth near the front. She was wearing a pale blue dress, her bracelet catching the light when she turned her wrist. The speeches went smoothly. The applause sounded genuine. Cameras flashed as Daniel thanked the guests, his voice calm and deliberate. When the lights dimmed and the guests began to leave, the air changed. The sound of heels, laughter, the shuffle of coats, all ordinary. Maya followed Ruth toward the side exit, texting Noah about getting ice cream on the way home. She didn't notice the black van idling beyond the rain-slick curb. Inside the van, Reggie sat in the passenger seat beside a man with a scar across his jaw, Dennis Voss. There, Dennis murmured, eyes fixed on the doorway. "Wait until she's past the awning." Reggie's breath fogged the glass. "Quick clean. In and out." Dennis smiled faintly. "You think too small. A scared girl's worth more than you realize." Reggie didn't reply. His fingers clenched around the door handle. Outside, Maya stepped under the awning, fumbling with her phone. The rain had thickened, washing the pavement into glass. She heard the sound of an engine rev, distant but growing closer. Then a van door slammed. Fast footsteps. She turned. A man lunged from the shadows, the flash of a gloved hand, a rough breath. Before she could scream, another hand clamped over her mouth. Her phone hit the ground, its screen shattering into light. Maya, Ruth's voice from behind, thin, terrified. For a split second, the world narrowed, the smell of gasoline rain and the sound of her own pulse hammering in her ears. Then, "Federal agents, don't move." The parking lot exploded with light. Headlights, flashlights, voices shouting commands. The rain turned into silver mist in the glare. Reggie froze, hand still outstretched. Dennis cursed and swung around, only to find Caleb behind him, gun drawn, voice cold and sharp. "On the ground, now." The chaos was quick, efficient. Boots splashed through puddles. Radios crackled, cuffs clicked. Reggie tried to run, but a beam of light caught him square in the chest. 2 agents tackled him to the pavement. He screamed, twisting, "You set me up. You think you can steal my life." Daniel emerged from the doorway, rain soaking through his coat. His voice was quiet but cutting. "No, Reggie. You threw it away." The agents lifted Reggie, his hands bound his face, pale under the streetlight. Maya stood trembling against the wall, breath shaking, tears mixing with rain. Caleb crouched beside her, voice low and steady. "It's over. You're all right now." Daniel reached her seconds later, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. She clung to him, unable to speak. Across the lot, Reggie was pushed into the back of a black SUV. Dennis followed, silent now, his expression blank. The doors slammed shut and the vehicles rolled away into the dark. By dawn, every news outlet carried the headline, "Federal arrests linked to multi-state extortion network." Authorities confirmed that the operation had begun after an anonymous informant provided financial records weeks earlier. No names were given, but Daniel didn't need to read further. He knew whose fingerprints were on those files. He turned off the television and looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The world felt strangely quiet. In the kitchen, Maya sat wrapped in a blanket, staring into her cup of tea. The steam had faded, but she held it anyway. Daniel joined her, sitting across the table. Neither spoke for a while. The clock ticked softly, steady as a heartbeat. "They said he'll go to prison," Maya said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "For a long time." Daniel nodded. "Long enough." She exhaled slowly, a trembling breath that steadied as it left her. Her eyes drifted toward the window, where the clouds were breaking apart, sunlight slipping through. "Done," she said. Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said, "it's over." Outside, the city glistened after the rain, not spotless, but clean enough to begin again. The first morning of spring came quietly. Sunlight slid across the kitchen floor, slow and gold, touching the edge of Maya's sneakers as she tied the laces. Outside, the trees were budding again, their shadows soft against the pavement. For the first time in months, there was no car waiting by the curb. Sarah leaned against the doorway, a coffee mug in hand, watching her. "You sure you're ready to walk alone?" Maya nodded, tucking the small alarm device Caleb had given her into her pocket. "It's only 4 blocks. Sarah smiled, half teasing, half proud. 4 blocks more than yesterday. Daniel came down the stairs, adjusting his cufflinks like it was any other day. "You've got your ID, the key, and your emergency line." "Yes," Maya said with the kind of patience she'd learned from him. "I've got everything." He looked at her for a moment longer, the way a man does when he's still half afraid of what the world might take. "All right," he said finally. "Go on." Maya opened the front door. The air was crisp, scented faintly of rain and something green. She hesitated on the step, glancing back at the 2 faces watching her. "I'll be fine," she said softly. Sarah smiled. "We know." Maya started down the sidewalk. The morning was alive with the ordinary, the distant bark of a dog, the sound of a school bus turning the corner, the rhythm of her shoes on concrete. Each step felt new, like testing ground that finally held. Halfway down the block, she reached into her pocket and brushed her thumb over the small metal alarm. It was cool against her skin, not fear, not safety, just a reminder that she could keep walking. From the porch, Daniel watched her until she turned the corner. Sarah slipped her hand into his. "She's different," she said quietly. "So are we," he answered. They stood there for a while, the sunlight warming the space between them. Later that evening, when Maya came home, she dropped her backpack by the door and sat at the kitchen table. It was strange, she said. Everyone acted normal, like nothing ever happened. Daniel sat across from her, his sleeves rolled, papers spread around him. "That's what normal does," he said. "It forgets, but you don't have to." Maya tilted her head. "Then how do you know when you're really okay?" He thought for a moment, then smiled, a quiet, tired smile that reached his eyes. "Peace," he said, "isn't when nothing bad happens. It's when you know you can live through what's not normal and still find your way back." She looked at him, the words settling somewhere deep. "That sounds hard," she said. He nodded. "It is, but you're already doing it." Outside, the light shifted again, the last of winter's chill giving way to something warmer, something soft. Maya leaned her head against the window pane, listening to the faint hum of the world returning to itself. For the first time in a long time, she didn't flinch at the sound of silence. She just breathed slow and even and let it stay. It happened on a Sunday afternoon when the house felt too quiet for its size. Maya had followed Ruth up to the attic, helping her look for an old quilt she wanted to donate. Dust floated through the beams of light, turning the air golden. Boxes lined the walls, each marked in Ruth's looping handwriting, Christmas photos, Noah's old toys. "Careful where you step," Ruth warned, easing herself onto a low stool. "Some of these boards remember the 70s. Maya smiled, brushing dust from a stack of boxes. "It smells like history up here." "Or just age," Ruth said, half laughing. Maya pulled open one of the boxes near the far wall. Inside were folded linens, a cracked frame, and beneath them, a small tin box rusted at the edges. It was lighter than she expected, the metal cool against her palms. "What's that?" Ruth asked. "I don't know." Maya turned it over, frowning at the faded label CG. She opened the lid. Inside were envelopes, worn, yellowed, corners bent. Some had stamps that had never been used. Others were sealed, their ink smudged by time. Ruth inhaled sharply. "Camilla," she said softly. Maya froze. These were hers. Ruth nodded slowly. She wrote letters sometimes, never mailed them. Said writing made the noise quiet for a while. Maya sat down, legs crossed, heart thudding. She lifted one of the letters and unfolded it with careful fingers. The paper crackled, fragile but intact. "Dear Maya," it began, the handwriting looping and unsure. "I don't know how to be a good mother yet. Some days I think I'll figure it out tomorrow. Other days I think you already deserve better than me. But I'm trying. Even when I fall, I'm trying." Maya's eyes blurred halfway through. She read another. "I saw you sleeping tonight, your hand tucked under your cheek. You smiled in your dream. I hope one day you dream of something better than this place. I hope one day you don't flinch when you hear loud voices." She folded it back slowly. "She wrote to me," she whispered, even when she couldn't say it. Ruth reached over, laying a hand on her shoulder. She was scared, but she loved you harder than she knew how. Maya looked down at the pile of letters, voice trembling. "She really thought I'd read these someday." Ruth nodded. "Maybe she knew you'd come looking when you were ready." They sat together in the filtered sunlight, the air thick with dust and memory. Ruth picked up one of the unopened envelopes and smiled sadly. "Camilla was the weakest strong person I ever knew," she said. "Too gentle for the world, too stubborn to let it break her completely." Maya brushed a tear from her cheek, a small, unsteady laugh escaping her. "I think I'm a little like her." Ruth squeezed her hand. "That's not a bad thing, sweetheart. The world needs more of that kind of strong." They spent the rest of the afternoon reading in silence, the rustle of paper, the creak of old wood, the faint hum of the wind through the attic window. Each letter felt like a heartbeat reaching across years that hadn't been kind, but hadn't won either. When the sun began to dip, Maya gathered the letters carefully into her lap. "I want to keep them," she said, "not to be sad, just to remember her as she really was." Ruth smiled. "Then that's what you do." Maya looked around the quiet attic, the golden light, the soft dust, the weight of love that had outlived pain, and whispered to herself, almost like a promise, "I see you now, Mom." And for the first time, those words didn't hurt. They healed. The ballroom shimmered under amber light. Crystal glasses clinked, and a soft string melody floated above the quiet hum of conversation. The annual Hayes Foundation Gala, the first, since everything had drawn a full room. Donors, officials, journalists, faces that smiled easily when the world was steady again. Daniel stood at the podium in a dark suit, his voice even and calm. Tonight he said, "We celebrate not rescue, but resilience. Every story that was nearly lost, found again." Applause swelled, polite and warm. At the center table, Maya sat beside Sarah and Ruth, her hands folded in her lap. She'd grown taller since the last time she'd been on a stage. The scar near her wrist caught the light when she lifted her glass of water. She looked around the chandeliers, the applause, the smiles, and felt something she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, yes, but also distance. She wasn't the girl everyone was clapping for. Not anymore. When Daniel stepped back, the MC announced the next speaker, but Maya had already stood. Her chair slid back with a quiet scrape that carried through the room. Heads turned. Maya, Sarah whispered, but the girl was already moving toward the stage. The MC hesitated, uncertain, then stepped aside. Maya climbed the few steps to the microphone, her reflection shimmering faintly in the glass teleprompter blank, waiting. She rested both hands on the podium and took a slow breath. The hall fell into a hush, so complete it felt fragile. "I wasn't supposed to talk tonight," she began, her voice soft but clear. "But I think I need to." She paused, the kind of silence that wasn't hesitation, but gathering. "For a long time I thought survival was the end of the story, that if you just lived through it, you'd be fine. But it doesn't work like that." Her voice steadied. "People like me, kids from broken places, we don't need saviors. We need people who stay when the story gets hard." The words landed heavy, not dramatic, just true. Cameras flashed, but she didn't blink. "We need people who don't flinch when we tell the truth, who don't look away when it gets ugly, because we're not problems to fix, we're voices that deserve to be heard." Somewhere in the crowd, someone exhaled. A woman dabbed at her eyes. Daniel's hand resting on the table tightened slightly. Pride and ache tangled in the gesture. Maya's eyes swept the room. If you've ever survived something and thought that was the end, it isn't. It's just the beginning. She stepped back. The silence lasted a beat longer than applause usually does, then rose not loud, but deep, like the room understood it had just heard something that would stay. When she returned to her seat, Sarah reached for her hand. Ruth whispered, "You sounded like your mother, just braver." Maya smiled faintly, the kind that comes from peace, not relief. Maybe she finally gets to be heard too. Daniel leaned toward her voice, low enough for only her to hear. "You did what none of us could. You gave it meaning." She looked at him, eyes steady. "No," she said softly. "You just gave me the chance." The music resumed, gentle and slow, but it felt different now, less like background, more like something alive. Maya sat quietly through the rest of the evening, the words still echoing inside her. She didn't know it yet, but they would travel farther than this room, to screens, classrooms, and hearts she'd never meet. And somewhere in the crowd, for the first time in her life, she wasn't being watched. She was being heard. Spring turned into early summer, the kind that carried light deep into the evenings. Maya's speech from the gala had spread farther than any of them expected. Someone had recorded it. Within days, it was everywhere, shared, quoted, replayed. But for her, the words weren't a performance. They were a beginning. She stood now in a smaller room far from chandeliers and applause. The Hollow Creek Youth Center smelled faintly of marker pens and floor polish. Posters peeled from the walls, and a group of teenagers slouched in plastic chairs, more guarded than curious. Maya adjusted the microphone, though she didn't really need it. "Hi," she said simply. "I'm Maya." No reaction. A boy in the back crossed his arms. A girl picked at her sleeve. She smiled faintly. "I'm not here to give a speech. I just came to tell you that surviving something doesn't make you broken, it just makes you proof." One of the girls looked up just for a moment. That was enough. She told them pieces of her story, not the headlines, not the names, just the small truths. How some days it feels like the world has already decided who you are, and how it's okay to prove it wrong one small step at a time. When she finished, the room was quiet, not empty, but thinking. A staff volunteer leaned over and whispered, "That was different." They listened. Maya smiled, because it wasn't a speech. Weeks later, she stood on a larger stage, this time at the City Youth Conference. Rows of students filled the auditorium, notebooks on their laps, lanyards swinging. Daniel and Sarah watched from the audience, Ruth sitting proudly between them. When Maya spoke, her tone was confident but calm. "People call what happened to me a story," she began, "but I don't want to be a story. Stories end. I want to be a voice, because voices keep going." Applause started slow, then spread like light. Afterward, a girl her age approached her holding a worn backpack. "You said something I didn't know I needed to hear," the girl whispered. "That I'm not broken either." Maya smiled, a little shy but certain. "You never were." By midsummer, Maya had started something of her own, a quiet project with a loud purpose. Every Tuesday, 10 girls from the foster care system gathered at the Foundation's community room. They played music, painted, shared small stories, sometimes just sat in silence. Maya called it the summer room. When Daniel asked why, she said, "Because everyone needs one place where it's safe to just exist." Caleb volunteered to teach basic self-defense. Sarah handled the art supplies. Ruth baked bread for every session. It became something simple and beautiful, ordinary kids learning they mattered. When August came, Maya expanded the idea. She partnered with her old school Rosewood High to create a mentorship program called One Room at a Time. The idea was small: connect each struggling student with one adult who actually listened. During the first meeting, the principal asked her, "You really think this can change anything?" Maya looked at the students filing in, awkward, uncertain, hopeful. "Not everything," she said, "but it can change one person at a time. That's how everything starts." Later that evening, she walked home as the sky dimmed to violet. The city buzzed faintly in the distance, but here the streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that held promise instead of fear. Passing the Foundation's glass windows, she saw her reflection, older, now steadier. The girl who once hid behind other people's words was gone. She paused, pressed her palm against the cool glass, and whispered, not to anyone, just to the night itself, "I'm still here." And for the first time, the words didn't sound like survival. They sounded like purpose. The air smelled like rain again, that clean kind that comes before a new season. It had been nearly a year since the night everything changed. The house felt alive now, fuller, lighter, the kind of place where laughter came without effort. Ruth was in the kitchen humming while she wrapped something in soft paper. "You're sure she'll be home on time?" she asked. Sarah smiled. "You've been pacing for half an hour, Ruth. She'll be here." Ruth made a small dismissive sound, but her eyes were warm. Moments later, Maya walked in, cheeks pink from the cold. "Sorry, traffic was." She stopped when she saw them all waiting at the table. Daniel, Sarah, Noah, Ruth, and the small box between them. Noah grinned. "Open it." Inside the paper was a thin silver chain with a small charm, a circle engraved with 2 words still standing. Ruth's voice was gentle. "It's not about being unhurt," she said. "It's about still choosing to stand after the hurt." Maya blinked, tears threatening, but soft. She fastened the necklace around her throat and touched the charm with her fingertips. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "You earned it." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Maya sat at her desk, the small lamp casting a circle of warm light. Her journal lay open, pages filled with cramped handwriting and folded notes, pieces of herself she was finally ready to understand. She wrote slowly, her pen scratching lightly across the paper. "I am the girl with scars, with strength, with stories. I'm still standing, and now I choose to rise." She closed the book and ran her hand across the cover, smiling. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a weight. It felt like roots. The next morning, the family packed the car for a short trip just a few days away by the ocean. Noah bounced in the back seat. Ruth laughed at his running commentary. Sarah checked the picnic basket twice, and Daniel adjusted the mirrors one last time before driving. The sky opened wide and blue. When they reached the shore, Maya slipped off her shoes and walked barefoot toward the water. The waves folded softly over her toes, cold and gentle. Behind her, the family spread a blanket, their voices drifting like a familiar song. She turned to look at them, the people who had stayed, the people who had refused to look away, and something inside her eased completely. She whispered to herself, barely audible beneath the wind, "Home isn't a place, it's being seen." The sun dipped lower, painting gold over the water. Maya stood there, the tide curling around her feet, the charm at her neck catching the last light of the day. She breathed in slow and steady, and smiled a small, certain smile that carried everything she'd lived through. For a moment, she closed her eyes, not to forget, but to feel how far she'd come. And when she opened them again, the horizon didn't look like an ending. It looked like a beginning. And just like that, the story of Maya Green came full circle. From a frightened girl on a cold street to the young woman standing tall beneath the open sky, from silence to voice, from pain to purpose. She was never the headline they made her to be. She was the proof that even the smallest act of kindness can change everything. If this story has touched you in any way, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so together we can keep moments like these alive in a world that moves too fast. We'll see you again in the next story.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.